know like what's going on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go over that. So as part of this second part, I'm going to do the demo. So hopefully I can
Okay.
answer your question,
Okay.
so that I can show you this is usually what I do. I usually do like a step-by-step as if I'm doing it. You're like you guys are doing it.
Okay.
So maybe doing that, it will kind of give you the answer that you need.
Okay.
Because
Thank you so much.
you're welcome, because placing images in InDesign is a little different.
It is.
Yes, it's a little different than say Illustrator or Photoshop. So, okay.
Mhm.
So when I get to that part, if you have any questions, just let me know.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Sorry, guys, I actually had to, I forgot, I had to create a new link for this. So I had emailed and put that in announcements. Hopefully next week I will have this all better organized. I forgot that they have a time limit. So you have to pay extra, of course, for over an hour if you're doing a personal account for Zoom. So it kind of was saying, I'm going to shut you off if you don't pay extra. So what I'm trying to do is avoid that. So I'm not paying extra. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably set up a professional account. I think I do have a couple here that I can tap into so that I'm not dealing with that. Anyway, this will kind of work as 2 chunked videos anyway. So you have the intro first video, and then the second video is more of a demo. All right, so I know I lost a few people in transition. I apologize, but I'm just going to go forward here. All right, so touring the interface, just a little recap too. These programs in Adobe works really hand to hand. They're simultaneously intuitive with each other. But it's also good to know that they are different in how they are, obviously the tools are a little different and how we use them as a designer. So there are reasons we use Photoshop, different reasons why we use Illustrator, and also InDesign. So just kind of a nice little infographic here showing you the differences. So Photoshop is really basically for color correction, retouching and enhancement of photos, special effects, creation of web, motion graphics, user interface, and mobile design. It's a raster-based image or raster-based software, so it's dependent on pixels. Okay, whereas Illustrator is opposite. It's a vector-based program, so it doesn't depend on pixels. It's actually depending upon, it's a mathematical type of a program where it, instead of using pixels, it uses lines and in a mathematical equation, so that you're not going in and dealing with pixelation or anything like that. It's more of a line generated vector-based program. So that's where you would do logos, monograms, signia design, vector illustrations, and non-photographic website element creation. That's where you would actually do those pieces. Say if you were creating, and I did this a lot in publication design, where say I would do a cover for a magazine, I would do all of my logo elements and special effects, like just different design elements in Illustrator and Photoshop, and then I would bring them into InDesign to actually lay out the page, because InDesign is great for multiple page document layout, so like books, brochures, because you can really kind of connect the type a little easier and lay out the type a little easier. So that's basically what designers do. They go back and forth, usually a lot from each program, and then pull it all into InDesign at the end. Now you can just design in each of these two, but knowing the purpose of each is important. So InDesign is, uses, actually that should be corrected too. They just changed master pages to now be called parent pages. So it's the same thing, but now they're called parent pages and page numbering. So it's an easy way to page number using parent pages, text wrap, typesetting, and file packaging. So that's why we use that for, books and magazines. So let's go ahead and take a look at InDesign here. Let me stop sharing, stop talking. And I'm going to share my screen. So when you open up InDesign, and it probably looks a little different on my screen here because I've had other projects open up, but you'll see this interface, typically what you see, in the other programs. And so there's always 2 or 3 ways to do the same thing in a lot of these programs. So you can open or you can create a new file on the left-hand side here. You also have your home page, which will take you home to here. And then your learn page. This is great because, if you want to learn certain things in Illustrator, you can click on this learn tool and it gives you tutorials to go to, which is a nice, nice feature there. So, use that as a resource. You have your profile up here. Obviously, if you have your Adobe Cloud all set, you'll see your profile up here. And it will usually list, anything that you had opened here, your recent. And then also it has your presets. So let's say if you're going to do like a printed piece, like say a letter letter size, 8.5 by 11, you can just click on that. It'll open right away. If you're designing for, say, an iPad, you would click on that. So it has nice, other applications that you can do, web sizes as well. And then there's more presets here if you click on that. I'm just going to do new file, or you could do 8.5 by 11. It's completely up to you. And when you click on new file, it's going to create a new document. And it's going to show you all these little preset sizes. You don't have to go with that, just as long as you're paying attention to the width, the height. So sometimes yours might be like a special size. This is typically the, standard sizes that we work in. That's why they show that there. Also, just kind of make mention too, this is the width of your artboard, your height. Pay attention to the units, make sure they're inches. Sometimes it could be, if you first open this, this could be in points. So just make sure inches is selected. This is the orientation of your page. The landscape would be obviously longer than it is tall, so it would switch your width to your height. Facing pages is basically if you were working, say, for designing for a magazine, you would have spreads set up. So it'd be a page next to a page, and that's how you would view it. I'm just going to uncheck that for now for this assignment. I don't think you need that. And then pages, you can actually place in how many pages. So if you have like a 100-page book, you can put 100 pages in there and it'll set you up. I'm just going to do one for now. Start page number 1, that's fine, just ignore that. Columns, this is where you can actually set up your columns. So if you knew you were going to do like a 2-column or a 3-column grid, you could change that here, and that could help you align your text. You could always leave this at 1 and change it when you go forward. So you're not really, it won't, permanently set that to 1. You can always change that, and I'll show you how to do that. And then the gutter is basically that space in between your columns. And this is just a preset space, but it's also changeable. When you scroll down, you have your margins. Remember, we talked about margins around your trim edge. This is defaulted at 0.5 inches. That's good. I think that's pretty typical. Sometimes I'll do like a 0.75 if I want a little bit of a larger margin, depending on the size of my layout. And just remember that the little link here, if you click on it, if you click on it, that it's linked, it will change all of these top, bottom, left, and right to that same number. Bleed and slug, we're not going to get into that, but this is where you'd find that. We're going to hit create. All right, here's your page. Let me zoom out here. Now, just know everybody has their own way of doing things and the way that you like certain things. You always have your preferences up here, and I know you can't see my menu bar, but if you go up to InDesign on your menu bar, you'll select preferences, and general is just obviously the general preferences. So you can kind of click through here. And all of these titles are obviously up here as well. So let's go to general. This is just stuff that you don't really have to change, but I just want to show you. It's just basic general settings. If you go to interface, this is where it changes that dark background. So, say if you really want it to be light, you can change it to the lighter background. You can change it to the medium dark. I have it set to my, this not so dark. It's like in the middle, like almost dark, medium dark, I should say. I like that. So that's a preference that you can change in there, just an FYI. Let's see, what else do we have here? Grids. We have grids. So if you go to grids, you'll see that that's going to show up as a light blue. You can always change that. And I'll show you in a second how that shows up. And it kind of has specifications. So you can always change the grid. And we're just going to keep it this way because we're fundamentally just showing you the basics here. But I just wanted to let you know that there is a way to also change all of these settings. All right, I'm going to hit cancel. So the trim edge is where the white hits the dark. So that's your trim edge. That's where, anything will be cut off if printed. And then your purple line here are your margin lines. Remember how we set that to 1/2 inch? So right now I have let's go to view. If you don't have your rulers up, go up to view, show rulers, and you'll see the rulers appear over here on the left, vertical rulers, and then horizontal on the top. So this is important because when you draw out your guides, you can actually click over here to the left and pull them out here. So say if you wanted to set this at, let's see, 4 inches, see how I'm kind of lining it up to 4 up here. These are margin guides. You can actually set your grid even up horizontal guides. And you could kind of do your grid like this as well. And these won't print. These are margin guides that you can edit. As long as you have your guides, if you go up to view and you go down to grids and guides, if you have the guides locked, you won't be able to move them, but that's nice as an option. So if you're setting your guides where you want them and you know that's where you want them, you can lock them so you're not moving them. You can also hide them here too, okay? So you can delete them. If you click on it and hit delete on your keyboard, you can delete them, but that's how you would do your guides here. And then your margin guides, that purple line, you can always change this. Remember how I said you can change it? So you go up to layout and margins and columns. And ours is set to 0.5. If I set it higher, you'll see it kind of, if you hit the preview button, you'll see it change here. See how it's getting bigger? So you can actually change that here. I'm going to hit cancel. Another thing that you can change there is the layouts on your menu bar in the margins and columns is your actual columns. Right now it's set to 1. If I increase that and I have the preview button selected, you can see how that margin, or I'm sorry, that column becomes 2 and then 3. And you can keep going and going and going. Okay. So if you know a set column guide, you can, go back in here and set it. All right. You also have under view, grids and guides, you have show baseline grid. And let's see here. You also have, okay, so baseline grid is basically kind of like a notebook where you can adjust the spacing in between here too. You just have to go to your preferences. But this is, say, if you're setting type, you want to make sure it all kind of goes on the same grid, like on the same baseline grid. And then there's also, let me hide this so you can, sometimes it's distracting, hide baseline grid. Go back to view, grids and guides, show document grid. And this is a grid that won't print, that again allows you to figure out, better grid structure, but you can also adjust this too. And that was in those settings where I went into Adobe preferences and grids. We can reset that to a different size if need be. So that's where you would see that. Let me hide that. Sometimes there we go. Any questions about that? I know it's a lot of information. Let's see here, my chat area, if anybody's typing in here. I'm going to go through the basics again, and then I'm going to go through the demo for your project. So you kind of get the idea of some of these tools too that we're going to be going over. One thing before I switch back, there is always, again, a preference to what you see out here as far as your panels coming out here. Sometimes people like it really clean where there's not so many panels here. So just an FYI, on the upper right-hand corner of your InDesign work navigation bar, you should be able to click on, it might say Essentials. Go ahead and click on that and you can reset that so that it's cleaning up all of your panels for you. So it's not like if you have all these panels out here, you can kind of clean it up going under here and saying reset. What's nice about this, they also have other settings in here. Say if you're doing a book, you could select book and it's going to show you all of the panels needed to create a book design that are often used. Digital publishing, essentials is just essentials, like kind of what we need essentially for anything. And so on and so forth, typography. And then you could do a new workspace. So like you can actually create a workspace for this class. You just rename it and it'll save it. So it'll save all your, panels out here that you use when you come back. It's kind of neat. All right, so let me stop sharing this screen. Let me go back to this screen and we're going to go over your project now because I think a lot of this intro stuff will be also introduced to you through this demo. So for this assignment this week, assignment 2, you will design an advertisement using a well-defined grid structure to enhance visual hierarchy, explore multiple options to enhance and to improve your design concepts. Your grid should make the content easy for the reader to understand. Use your space well and keep in mind there are many possible and viable solutions to this creative challenge. So you're going to choose only one. So only one, fruits or vegetables. And the size is going to be 8.5 by 11. So portrait format is going to be taller than long. You're going to go into your actual assignment. I'll show you in a second here, your folder, and you're going to choose one or the other, fruits or vegetables. And in this folder, you will find the imagery to use in the ad you're designing. Also, photos must be used, or I'm sorry, all photos must be used. You may crop or resize any photo. And then also included in the folder is a Word document containing the text for this creative grid challenge. You must use all of the text in the Word document. You will apply a well-defined grid structure to enhance visual hierarchy. And then when you're done, not only are you going to save it as an InDesign file because you want to go back to make necessary changes, but you also want to save it out as a PDF. And I'll show you that in a second here. So let me stop sharing. Actually, let me start sharing your page here. So if you go into Mod 2, some of you had questions in regards to how to get to the actual zipped folders. I'm going to show you that as well. All right, so this is all of what you see on your page, probably a little bit more because I'm an instructor. So what you're going to do, this is your discussion. We already went over that. Oh, we have somebody who has a, hold on 1 second, let me mute you for a sec. There we go. Okay, so this is your week 2 Power of Grids. Just go ahead and click on that actual link. And this is where you'll not only find the instructions fully written out, but you'll also find your zipped folders down here. Okay, so go ahead and click on those. It's gonna download those. I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm having oh, sorry. About my week 1 and about the week 1 I did.
Okay, I'm going to mute you for a second because I'm going over this demo. So you can stay after class and ask me this question if that's okay.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Oops. All right. Yeah, just stay muted, everybody, until we get to the end, and then I can take questions, and that'll just help everybody. All right, so go ahead and download whichever folder that you want, vegetables or zipped. It's going to put it in the download folder here, and then you're going to unzip it. Now, I'm on a Mac, so it shows up on my download folder here, and I'm using Firefox, by the way. That's usually Google Chrome or Firefox are the best browsers to use for Blackboard for your class. Okay, after downloading, I'm going to open up that folder. Now, let me share my folder here. This is what it's going to look like. Now, I downloaded, let me get my desktop so you can see my whole desktop. I downloaded both of the folders so you can see both fruits. You have your apples, bananas, fruit, oranges, strawberries, and this is your Word file. Okay, so it should be docs, vegetables, and then the Word file. So choose whichever one you do. I'm going to do fruits. And what I would suggest is go through each of these, just kind of take a look. You might want to do some sketches to see how you want to do your grid structure. But more importantly, I would open up the Word document just to see what you're dealing with in terms of space. And this is the fruit copy. So what you want to do is read through this, see what is the most important information and what's the least important. And know that you have to set up a hierarchy, right? So the most important information you want most emphasized, and then the least you want not as much emphasized. So I would say the headline would be obviously this: why is it important to eat fruit? This would be the most important information. Then I would say this is the next important information. So it just kind of gives you a little idea of what this is about. And then it lists out health benefits. So here's a list. So you could show that in different ways, but this would be probably more like body copy size. And then you have your call out information. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and select all of this, do an edit. Sorry, not edit. Yeah, sorry, edit copy. I usually do a Command C. That's why I kind of said no. So Command C will copy. And then we're going to go to your InDesign document. And again, I'm going to just go over this real quick. Just go File, New, Document. You can choose the 8.5 by 11. Everything looks good. Create. All right. Now at this point, what I would do before you do anything with the grid, I would take your type tool, and this is the toolbox, I should say. And there's different ways you could view this too, if you want to kind of play around with this vertically, two stacked, whatever you want to do. The type tool, if you click on that and click and drag it, I'm going to do it starting up here, drag it all the way down here. And then you do edit paste or Command V. It's going to paste all of that information in that copy box. Now I'm going to take the selection tool, which is the black arrow. And this selection tool is a great way to change the size of the box, move the text around so that you can kind of play around with it. All right, so we have this information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I want to compartmentalize this information, but I want to also create a grid structure. So I'm going to go up to view, make sure your rulers are showing. Mine are showing, so I'm good. And I'm going to make sure that maybe, let's say 2.5 of this top part will be images. And then, obviously you could kind of break this up into smaller sections. And what I'm just doing is kind of saying, okay, maybe I can put, how many images do I have? Let's look at that. That might be a good way to do it. Let's see, we got fruits. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got odd number of fruits, but that's okay. I could repeat one if I want. And let's see, we're going to set this up so it is, and I can't see my top part here. I'm going to pull this down. So we're going to do, let's see, 2.5. And you can adjust this axis here so that the 0 starts where you're starting again by just clicking and drawing that upper left-hand corner of your axis. So right here, just click and drag, and that's where the 0 starts. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of divide this up the best I can here. Pick a grid structure that works for you. Let me get rid of this one. And there we go. With that. And then what I can do is also pull this down. And this is my horizontal one too. I'm actually going to go 2 inches instead. So I'm going to pull this back up. So these are, changeable. There we go. And you can always change this. And it's not like you're locked into, into doing this particular grid structure. You can always kind of change it. Just kind of think about what you want to do. So basically, I want to do all my images on top, some of my images on the bottom, and the text in the middle. It's up to you on what you want to do. You could do exactly what I'm doing if you want, but feel free to experiment. Okay, now I'm going to place in my images. And this is where somebody had a question, I believe, earlier. So hopefully I'll answer that question. All right, so the only way to place, there's a few ways to place images in here, but this is the way to do it where you can actually set the preset size. you can actually set it to a custom size. So you want to go to the rectangle frame tool. It looks like a little rectangle with an X in it. Okay. And you're going to click and drag that little box where you want it. I'm going to put one here, and you can see that this is exactly what I want because it has a little X in there. Okay. And you're going to just do that wherever you want that image to be. And you could always change the size of this using your selection tool, which is the black arrow. Okay, so I'm kind of aligning this so it's all the same size on the same baseline. Now I'm just going to copy this. You can do a shift select to copy to select each one, and then Command C, Command V will paste it. So do all the work, pull this to the bottom. And this is where my images will be. So I'm going to select that first box, and I'm going to do File Place, or you can do Command D as a shortcut. Go in and find that picture of your fruit. I'm going to do apples. Hit Open. Now this is the tricky part because it's going to paste it in here at true to size, right? So what we want to do is we want to fit this in perfectly so that we see most of the image in this rectangle. Maybe not all of it, but most of it. So with this selected, what you're going to do is go up to Object on your bar, on your menu bar, and choose Fitting, and you're going to fill frame proportionally. And boom, it's gonna place it in there. You're going to do the same thing here. File, Place, or Command D. Bananas. Go back to Object, Fitting, Fill frame proportionally, if I could talk. Any questions about that? And it's good to kind of keep this consistent, as far as a repetition of the same size images so that you have a nice unified cohesive elements up here or wherever you're placing it. Same thing down here, Command D. Object fitting, fill frame proportionately. And I'm just going to reuse one of these because I only have 5, so I'm going to do apples again. And that's okay. And strawberries. Actually, what I think I'll do is I'll do apples on this. I'll do strawberries here. Kind of do a little different. Oranges, break up the color space in there. And then apples again. Any questions about that? Let me hide my guide so you can see what it looks like. Now, you don't have to do it this way. You could do it completely different. I'm just using that, just this kind of a layout to show you guys how I would start this. Now you could change it up. You could have these maybe on the inside, maybe all on the left side. They don't even have to be butt up against each other. They could be here on the left side, kind of play around with how you think you would like your grid structure to be. Somebody has a question here. Should images be placed in the margins? I didn't, so it doesn't necessarily have to be. Yep, these would be, I would actually have to set the bleeds on this if I were to actually print this. So more of the image would have to come out for the bleed to work, but you don't necessarily have to have, these set inside. Now the type, I would keep that inside the margin just because you don't want type to be like that. Because it's too hard it would be too hard to read. You want that margin space for your type. Good question. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to choose a typeface. So this is where you guys can select all, choose a typeface that's readable. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do all one typeface. I'm just going to go ahead and do a readable one. Let's do, let's see, Castellan for the type. And then the headline can be different. Like you can choose you know, like a very thick sans serif typeface for that. And you can make it a lot bigger. Remember how I said more emphasis on the headline? And that's where the character panel, you can change the font here. You can change the type size here. You can change the leading. That's the space in between the two lines of text, which here, of course, I would have to change. Think about how this wraps. So why is it important? I would probably bump down here to eat fruit. It kind of is a nicer way to break that. I'm going to pull it a little closer to each other. And you can tell that this has the most emphasis. I'm going to set this a little closer. The more far apart it is, if it's big like that, the harder it is to read together. So you want that to be closer. So I set my type point size to 48 and my leading to 46. The next part of this would be these two sentences here. I would probably set this a little bigger, maybe like a 16 point size, because you know, it's a little bit more important than this, maybe this information. So your eye goes to the headline, then the intro, and then you have your body copy, which I would stick around 11, 10 point sizes. 14 is usually a good leading for if you do a 10-point type size. 14 is usually a good leading space. It's a good ratio. Now you can always make this this part bold because it's, you know, the next set of what you would read. And then feel free if you want to do like a list here using your bullet points. And that would be option 8 on your keyboard is the bullet points that you would put in there. And then obviously you could see how it's listing out this list. That's kind of how I would do that. Pull down your type box if you can't see your copy, because, you know, obviously that's what's happening there. It's not showing. I'm going to go to 10, 14. Feel free to set this how you want in terms of, you know, what's key. I think this should be called out a little bit more. Okay, yep, we'll get to that. And then also, if you want to see, this is getting a little, the line length is getting too long here. So what you could do is just select all of this copy, Command C, which is copy, and delete it. So it has its own copy box. So the headline is its own copy box. Draw another copy box for just the rest of the copy. And then you have more control. Say if you want to make this maybe 2 columns, you would select this type box and you go up to layout, margins, and columns. And remember how I showed you, you could do 2 columns. You can actually set this to 2 columns. So you could go to, let's see here. Okay, yep, we'll get to that. They always change this in here, and I'm like always like, okay. It's in my character panel, or it's in my paragraph panel box. Let me bring that up. If you go up to window and you go down to types and tables, you can bring up your paragraph panel box, and this basically allows you to set your alignment. But it also lets you do other things too. You can, you know, play around with alignment. You can play around with indents on here. Your character box, you have other options here as well that you can play around with. Let's see here. All right. Somebody's typing in here. Wait for me to, okay. Yep. Yeah, we'll get to that. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to, I'm trying to find this here. Object text frame options, that's what's under. Okay, they changed a little of this, so I apologize. Okay, so now say you want to break this up into 2 columns. You select that box, go up to objects, and you're going to choose text frame options. And this is where you would change the columns to 2. And you can hit preview if you want to see it change. See how it just split it in 2? There's 1, 2. So if that's kind of what you want, you can definitely do that. Just know that this bumps the text up here. So you want to make sure that it's bumping up in a, in a way that works for your copy. You don't want it to be like uneven, or, you don't want a weird break there. So if that's something that you want to do, you could definitely do that. Because of the hyperlink being so long, we could put that in its own text box. I just deleted it and placed it in its own. So this is its own type box. This is its own type box, and this is its own type box. And what's nice about that is you can kind of, shift this up and down based on what you where you want it to be. Just make sure you have it all aligned. Any questions about that?
No, ma'am.
All right. You could change the color. So
I have a question about that.
Yep.
Like how you have to arrange the images inside without the other parts labeled.
I'm not quite sure. Can you type out your question? I might be able to understand. You're kind of breaking up a little bit. My apologies. If you could type it out, I might be able to. Yeah, your audio is breaking up a little bit.
Oh, okay. But I already typed in something just now, but did you see
Yeah, I
the
saw
message?
that. I did go over what to write in week 2 earlier in the lecture. So if you want to review the recording, it goes over all of that information.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Something I want to type out
Yep.
now.
So yeah, if you want to type that out. So if you want to change the color as you're typing that out, I'm going to show them how to change color. You just select your type and go to your eyedropper tool, which is right here. Okay, let me select the type again. Go to your eyedropper tool, and you can actually pull from your pictures if you want. So let me check the strawberry. Actually, let me click on darker strawberry. It might be too light. Let me see. Oh, that's not too bad. You can actually just select a pixel in one of these pictures to set that to that color. All right, so I'm going to hide guides. I only have a minute left here before it stops recording, so I'm going to give you guys a second here. I'm going to save as, just make sure you're saving as first, last name, initial. You could do week 2, save this to the desktop or a folder that you have on your hard drive, hopefully. And then when you're ready to save a PDF, you're going to go up to File, and you can do just a regular PDF. So a smallest file size is fine. You're going to save as a PDF. Everything looks good. Export. And then open the PDF. Make sure it looks good. This is what mine looks like real quick before you submit it. So this is what you would submit. Okay, I have less than a minute here. I'm going to stay in here, but the recording is going to stop. So just an FYI, I'm still here.
Yes, about.
Okay, hold on one second. Hold on, and we'll get right back to your question. We're just going to end this here. So I'm going to stop the recording. And then if anybody has questions, I will definitely go over that. So I'm going to stop the recording here. Hold on one second.
Wait,
Stay in